Okay, well, welcome everybody and thank you for joining. I'm Danielle Cahill, Head of Customer Experience at QEC Interactive, and I know many of you already on this call. And I'm joined today by Gavin Warran, who works for QEC UK, which is a UCAS certification body. And today he's going to talk to us about the journey to being accredited with ISO 9001. So I'm going to hand over to Gavin, and he's going to kind of talk us through the key steps. If anybody has any questions as we go along, please pop them in the chat, and I'll look after that panel and ask the questions, at the appropriate time, or else we'll come back to them towards the end. But please keep interactive on the chat with your questions. Okay, so over to you, Gavin.
Thanks very much, Danielle, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen with you, so if you could let us know that you can see that, that'd be great. Okay, so yeah, thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name's Gavin Warran. I'm the Operations Director of QEC UK. We are a UCAS accredited certification body. So that gives us the ability by UCAS, who are a national standards body, to provide assessments against ISO certifications within the UK. Well, we are able to offer it globally, but the area that I look over particularly is the UK. So what I'll do is I'll just take you through these areas, just a quick understanding of what is ISO 9000, what the benefits are, the steps to implementation, what the external audit process looks like. I'll touch on why UCAS, because that's a very important area to look at. And then I'll just mention a few other auditable standards that are certifiable as well. And my details will be at the end, which I believe Danielle will share to everyone should they need them. So ISO 9000, it's the standard for quality. It's the most recognised in the world for quality. It's been adopted by the ISO, which is the International Organisation for Standardisation. So in basically what it means is that each national standards body is able to create standards with industry best practice, and then the ISO then adopts them so they can be used internationally. So each country, if they'd started creating standards, could collaboratively bring them all together, and the ISO will adopt them so they can have a common approach across international waters. This means that it doesn't matter whether you're working in the UK or other countries in Europe or across the world, you will always have a common approach to the way that you kind of work to these standards. It helps organisations meet what their customers want. So it helps them meeting those expectations of each of their customers, ensuring their customers are happy, then they'll buy more, the profits will go up, and then you're going to be looking at helping the other stakeholders within the business, maybe the owners of the business or share owners. So it has those benefits as well. What it also does, it helps you to continually monitor and manage the quality across your products. So you may have a fantastic product, but too many of them are being rejected. And what ISO 9000 will help you do is to identify the problems in your processes, and help you make those changes improve. Mm-hmm. But when you're applying for tenders, one of the key things now is there's an expectation that lots of organisations should already have ISO 9000. But if you don't, when you are applying for a lot of tenders, especially if they're coming from local authorities or the NHS and things like that, then there'll be a large section that you'll have to say, if you don't have the standard, that you'll have to complete sometimes 10, 20 pages of what is my quality policy, or how we're involved in quality. If you have the standard already, it's a bit of a tick box exercise that you can put your certificate number and then jump on through. But what we're finding now, although it's best practice, and these are not a mandated requirement to conduct business, it's becoming mandated because the supply chain is mandating them for you to have these standards.
Yeah, I think what you were saying before, Gavin, is that a lot of potential clients are enforcing these standards on you. So it's not essentially by clients actually choosing to go down the ISO route. it's they're finding they need to do it in order to kind of go through tender processes for these larger corporations, or as you say, local authorities and things like that.
Yeah, local authorities are very hot on it, that you need to have these standards. Well, I've worked in the industry for nearly 20 years now, and within certification, we found that roughly 80% of our clients that came to us didn't come because they want to adopt these standards. They came because their supply chain told them, you must get these standards if you want to continue to work with us. And it's not until they start implementing it that they actually see these benefits and see the improvements, and they go, oh, why didn't we do these before? But it tends to be supply chain driven that they then see those improvements.
Yeah, and then they get the benefits. Yeah,
okay. Absolutely, and that's across all of the standards. But yeah, it's amazing how many just do it because they're being told to. Obviously, we've only got a small amount of time here, but I just briefly take you through the steps that will help you get to the point of certification. The first thing, which is what doesn't happen with lots of organisations when they want to get on the steps to implement ISO 9000, they quite often don't even get a copy of the standard, and that's a crucial thing, is get a copy of the standard, get used to the structure in it, the kind of vocabulary in it and things like that. What tends to happen is within the standards, they have a structure. You'll come across, if you do implement any of these standards, this structure, and it's called Annex SL. And it's not the most exciting thing to read, but it's a good thing to understand. And all it does is it breaks down all the different parts of what you need to do to achieve these standards. And it's across every single new standard now. So understanding it when you're looking at 9000 will benefit you going forward should you decide to adopt any of the other standards moving forward. After you've read and done that, the next step is planning. And when we say planning, that's getting your management team together, deciding who's going to be part of that process. It's always good not to leave this to one person. So if you can get a team, say you have 6 departments within an organisation, if you can get process owners within each of those teams to have some form of ownership, it just means that they don't feel that they're being forced upon adopting this standard. They can be part of it. They can give you input back and look for things that they feel can be an improvement, not you telling them this is the best way of doing things. So it's a really fundamental part is to get the right people involved so they feel that they've got a voice.
And I suppose one question that people will ask, and you know, certainly I would be asking the question, is, you know, does it take a lot of those individuals' time? Like, is it quite time consuming? Because obviously each of those department heads or, you know, team leaders will have their own full-time job, and they're obviously fitting this in, and obviously the first year is obviously a big year trying to get it right. So do you think they would have to give a large portion of their time to this effort?
If you didn't get the process owners involved and it was just yourself doing it, then yeah, it would take quite a lot of time to do. But what you've got to be thinking about is these standards shouldn't fundamentally change the way you work. They should be how you work. The standard should fit around your business, not your business fitting around the standard. That's the key message you've got to understand, is that you shouldn't be completely changing what you do. You should be looking how the standard is and then kind of amalgamating it. But your question is how long, what's the expectation from these people? Typically, an ISO 9000 can be implemented over 3 to 4 months as a time frame of the whole thing. When I've worked in consultancies as well as certification bodies, and what we tended to do, we would implement a process over about, say, 7 or 8 days, and then we would come in and support them over those days, and then they would have little bits of work, as it were, to do by the time we came back on the next month. And that wouldn't be kind of big project work. It would be ensuring all of the documents are pulled together, ensuring that maybe they need to do some awareness within the organisation. It's not a massive amount of work that they've got to do. the hardest thing is understanding the structure of the standard and understanding the language involved, because you read it and it's a lot harder to read than it is to actually put the system in and understand it.
Okay, cool.
And then, as I say, a part of that planning is that identifying who's going to be responsible, what your policies, what are you going to be thinking about your objectives, and then perhaps start agreeing what the quality for your business is going to be. Kind of think about the objectives. Quality for your business, is it going to be about, can we make more money? Is it about, can we reduce product recalls? Because that might be what you see for quality for your business is, maybe we've got 20% project recalls in our organisation. Let's see if we can reduce that to 10%. So quality to you then becomes about product recalls. So it's trying to understand what quality means for you as an organisation. And then, as I mentioned before, I like to just go back to it. In regards to those people within those organisations, in an ideal world, it would be good if they had an auditor within each of those departments, so they all fully understand the audit process. So when somebody's auditing you, they understand why. It's not to catch you out, it's to look at areas where you can improve things, making sure that things are done as well as they could be. But then we go onto the development stage. So that's developing your documentation. So developing your policies, your objectives that I mentioned, ensuring that you've got your processes documented. You might have brilliant processes that sit in the head of one of your individuals in the organisation. Should that individual suddenly leave, you've lost a lot of that knowledge. So it's trying to get that knowledge transfer into documentation. And I don't mean writing it down prescriptive, it's getting those process flows created so that you've got a nice flow. Should somebody come into the organisation, they understand the process, maybe not the minuscule detail, but they understand the process of that business, of that area within the business. And also, one of the things that we've been pulled up when I was in consultancy before is getting the development of your forms correct and ensuring that people use those forms and they're available for everybody. I've worked in sales for many years, and what I found out was that when I was creating a sale, doing a quote for a client, I'd quite often have similar quotes on my desktop, and I'd cut and paste a new client into those details, and I could get that out in 10 minutes. But if the business as a whole, their terms and conditions have changed, then that may not be then applicable to that quote that I've done. And should something go wrong, heaven forbid, you can't then use your terms and conditions because they've changed and you've used an old quote. So it's key that documentation is accurate, but it's also that it's being used and it's available. Once you've got all that, you're ready for launch. So this is before you've even got to the point of certification. This is just your preparation time. So when you're ready for launch, it's all about making sure that everybody understands it. Tell them about the forms, tell them about the policies, tell them if they've got an issue that they think something's not quite working, how they can report it so that they don't feel it's being dictated upon them. And this gives you the time to start planning your internal audits, start monitoring how things are going, start having team meetings to see in each team where things are working, where things aren't working, and where you can change them to improve them. And then we go to the review. So the review stage is where you start getting the management team sitting together to conduct a big management review, and that might be part of a regular management team meeting that often businesses have. So just join another 10 minutes on the end of that, and then say, let's have a look at the audits we did. What's our customer feedback? Is our customer feedback improving on what we're doing? Is it getting worse? Maybe we need to change things. And then start looking at, is the problems that we're having down to one of our processes? Is it a person? Maybe they need training. It's never the person's fault, it's the organisation not doing the proper training. So it's this opportunity now to look at, have we conducted our training correctly? Does that person need some support to improve that process? Or the product conformity. And then the assessment. So that, sorry, Daniel, did you have a question?
No, I'm just nodding along.
And then the assessment, that's an area where I kind of work in the most. So the assessment stage is when you get to the point to choosing a certification body to come and conduct a third-party assessment, so an external assessment. I just want to pick a key point on here. The key point in here is whenever you're going to look to choose an assessment body, an external assessment, ensure that it's a UCAS assessment body. And the reason I really pick on that is UCAS are the notification body for the UK. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of non-UCAS, non-accredited certification bodies in the UK. And they will all come and say, yeah, we can offer you a certificate, we can come and do your assessment. But it's just a risk to you as an organisation. And if you're looking to work with local authorities, if you're looking to work with government, with NHS, if they see that you haven't chosen an external audit body that's a UCAS one, they will often just disregard you because they see that you're not taking it seriously and you're still a risk. So I know I dwell on this a lot with people, but it's a fundamental thing. UCAS is the accreditation body that we abide by, and many other certification bodies. And then finally, continually improve. One of the requirements of ISO 9000 is not to stand still. You mustn't just put this in and go, right, job done, we'll come and see it next year when the certification body just make sure we've done things. Look to see how you can improve. No company is going to be perfect. How can we improve? Can we improve our customer satisfaction? Can we improve our product recalls? Can we improve the profitability on this? So there's many areas that you can look to do that. So they're kind of the 8 steps of things that you need to do. I know we haven't got a long time to go through this. I can't go into a great deal to tell you how to implement it, but those are those areas. And if anyone wants to discuss this further off-site, then I'm more than happy to go into a bit more detail of the sort of areas that you could do.
Mm-hmm. So would you say, obviously they're the 8 steps that you cover in the first year, and then do you have to do it all over again in year 2, or is it a much more condensed process and it's just a review and, as you say, look at continuously improving and you're just kind of reviewing what you've already done, or how does it work in a kind of a cyclical process?
Yeah, so I'll touch on in a minute the process for the external audits, because that is all about surveillance. But if you think about, once you have these systems in, they should be how you work. They shouldn't be, we've got to go back and do that. That should be how. The only times when you're thinking of doing big changes is if you as an organisation do a fundamental business change. So you completely change the way you work, then you need to start going back to your processes and change it within the way you work. Because if you say that you're doing one thing and you fundamentally change it, when you come to the point of the audit, if all your documentation says, we do this, we do this, we do this, and actually that's nothing what you do, then they will pull you up on it, because fundamentally what you say you do is not what you do. So once you get it, the process shouldn't be a hard thing. It's all about continuing to do your internal audits, continuing to look where things could be improved and making sure that you make those changes. But internal audits are probably the key part of this continual work, because that's the area where you can look and monitor and see where things are going wrong, see where you can improve them and make those changes.
Okay.
So this is the external audit process. This is the area that I fundamentally work in. So you get 4 steps within the external audit process. The first is a gap analysis, and this is an entirely optional area. This is kind of your sanity check. This is, are we ready for assessment, or are we going to go in this and end up kind of getting ripped to bits a little bit, and then it's embarrassing for you as a client. If you do a gap analysis first, it then is that point where it goes, okay, these are the areas where we're missing, these are the areas where we're really strong at, but these are the areas where we can look to improve. you can then do that before you go into that full audit process with the external body. And it's an ideal place just to go to your management board and say, okay, we're nearly there, we've just got to do this before we're ready to go. But it's totally optional. If you have a consultant supporting you, you often don't even go into that stage of gap analysis. You jump straight into the stage 1 and 2 audits.
Okay. And when would you say you do the gap analysis? Would you do that like the minute you just think about doing ISO 9000 before you kind of do any actions, or is it, you know, just before you're about to do your assessments, or what stage really?
Good question. Very good question. You can do it at 2 points. You can do it right at the start to kind of give yourself a picture as an organisation. This is where we're lacking as an organisation. This is where we're brilliant. And it will give you then your chance to go, okay, this is what we need to go and do. That's a very good place to do it. You could do it before you've even started anything. Or you can do it at this point where you think you're ready, but you're just not sure. So just before the point. So absolutely, they're slightly different gap analysis, because one is tell me what I've got and what I haven't got, and the other one kind of says, am I ready or not for the certification side of it? But in essence, they're both gap analysis, and they could be easily done at either points.
Okay, cool.
So if you've done a gap analysis or you've jumped straight in, you get into a 2-stage process for the internal audits. A stage 1 is where we'll come and look at the documentation. So it's a bit of a desktop view. Currently, they're all being done remotely, and it's possible that this is an approach that we're going to be moving forward. There'll be that approach that the stage 1s might be done remotely going forward, even after we all go back to our offices, because it's actually worked particularly well. But yeah, stage 1 just looks at the documentation. Show me your policies. Show me what you say you do. Show me the process for your sales team, for example. And you'll go, okay, this is how they work. This is a rough process flow diagram of all the things that they do. And then the stage 2 is a more hands-on approach. So we'll come into your office normally, into your site, and say, okay, can I speak to your salespeople? As I use that same example, can I speak to them? And you'll get taken to them, and they'll say, tell me what you do on a day-to-day basis. And they'll explain their process, and they'll make sure that it connects to what you've said you've done. It's that point where you connect the 2 things together. But that stage 2 will be of that whole business, talking to lots of different people, talking to the management, ensuring you've got that buy-in from that management, and it's not just, I've just got the quality manager, they're going to do it. Quality needs to come from the top. So that's that stage 2. Once you've done stage 1 and stage 2 and everything's okay, you might have the odd finding that you need to close out. They might say, before we can give you the certificate, you need to just complete this. Absolutely fine. So once you get your certificate, you go into a 3-year cycle. Annually, you get what's called a surveillance audit. And then every 3 years, you get a recertification audit. The surveillance audit is a sample process. So they look at kind of a third of the business each time they come in. And they'll just sample maybe sales or sample HR. And each time they look at different areas. Whereas the recertification is their opportunity to look at the whole business again. And it's similar to a stage 2 audit in effect, because they cover that whole part of that business. But it's to look at, are you continually improving? Are you looking to manage this as part of an improvement process, or are you just doing it as a tick box? You can still pass as a tick box, but they look at, can we add value to you as an organisation? Are you doing these things? These are some findings we've given you that you don't have to implement necessarily, but it could be best practice to help you improve. Have you considered? You'll get questions like that. Have you considered this? And that's that stage, that recertification. I've got why UCAS here, but I think I've covered that to death slightly. But I always go back to it because it's so key, is that you use a UCAS accredited certification body. You got any?
I just sort of a question just on the last one, and you kind of mentioned it earlier as well, kind of about breaking the plan into teams, like, you know, that you might have HR looking after, or sales, or whatever it is. to get your accreditation, does the whole company have to do it, or can you, focus on 3 departments one year and then the next year do 3 departments, or does it just not work like that?
In an ideal world, you'd do the organisation, and most companies do. But if you wanted to say, for example, you could ring fence part of it if you wanted to do, say, the payments process of this organisation. But whatever you did, it would be on your certificate. So your scope would be, in that case, the payments and provisions of da 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 da. But rather than, if it was the whole system, you'd have whatever that organisation did, it would be the provision of X, Y, Z on there.
Okay.
So in an ideal world, you do the whole thing, because it's just not the perfect way of doing it, to do it in little bits and chunks, because you go, okay, we want to extend our scope now. And if you look at any parts of your business, when they're doing the audits, they'll go, okay, what are the critical parts of that business? How do they affect? So they'll go, actually, accounts have an effect on that part of the business. They should be in scope. They're part of the critical part of that. And it gets quite tricky to define what is a critical part of that organisation. You can just ring fence it. But it does happen from time to time, but rarely.
Okay, cool, thank you.
I just touched quickly on a few of the other standards. So these 4 standards that you can see here, they all are structured with Annex SL. So they all are built in exactly the same way as ISO 9000. So should you wish to adopt these later on, they sit kind of hand in glove with each other. So there's opportunities for an integrated system. So you don't have to audit against just 9,000 when you're doing it internally, audit against 14,000. You can audit them at the same time, and it just makes a far more slick approach to the way you work. The standards here, so when you're looking at things like 14,001, it's around environmental. So it's making sure that you're complying with all your legislation. How can you improve your efficiency? How can you look at reducing waste? And obviously things like helping the planet as well. With the health and safety, how can we protect our most valuable assets, which is our staff? Lots of companies will have to do some parts by law, but it's quite interesting when we've helped companies implement 45,001 in the past. They haven't done the legislation, they don't comply with the legislation like they should do. And if HSC had ever come in on them, they would be shut down straight away, because they've grown from a very small company rapidly and then haven't followed those health and safety laws. But probably the fastest growing standard is the ISO 27001, the information security one. It's not only a fantastic USP to kind of say that we're working with you and lots of your data, but we're secure, all of your data is secure. It just shows you've got integrity as an organisation, that you're a far lower risk organisation than an organisation that doesn't have this standard. There are a lot of controls. I think it's about 114 different controls that you have to abide by with the standards. So it really shows that you as an organisation take risks really seriously. And then the final one. So this surprisingly has started to grow more rapidly over the last 12 months. It's one of those things that's a bit of an insurance. It's something you wish you'd never have to enforce, but perhaps if you had a scenario where you might get a pandemic, it might not happen very often, but it does happen. And having the COVID situation has just proved that lots of companies actually have quite good disaster recovery plans. They're quite good business continuity plans because they've had to work remotely. But then it makes you think, what happens if we had a fire and in the office and all of the laptops that were going to be passed out had all burnt down with the data center and things like that? What would we have done then? It's just making sure that you've got plans in place should things happen. If you do 27001, bizarrely enough, there is a section on business continuity, but it only touches on it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess if we were looking to do ISO 9001, is there one that kind of sits hand in hand with it, like that there's a lot of overlap, because I believe there's a lot of overlap in some of these standards. So do you see anyone that kind of partners up with ISO 9001 and people can do two of them, or potentially three of them together?
So it used to always be the triple of 9, 14 and 45, the quality, the health and safety and environment. They all used to go together beautifully. But it's changed over the last year or two, that since the rise of 27001, the information security, quite often that 9000 sits with that now.
Okay.
Because it's starting to go into tenders more. It's starting to be requested. If you want to work with me and I have all my data and my client's data with you, I want to ensure that it's protected. But they all work together. They work together beautifully. There's lots of commonality across all of the standards because of that Annex SL that is the structure for all of them.
Okay, super.
So that in a small, I guess about 20 minutes, is how to start looking at the implementation of ISO 9000. There is a lot more, as I say. I'm more than happy to send you further information. I can even send you kind of some questions to give you an idea of see where you are, if that helps as well. All my details are here. I'm more than happy to, if there's any other questions, to try and answer them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Gavin. I mean, I can specifically say that we work closely with Gavin at the moment, and we're going down this journey ourselves. So if anybody wanted to contact him, or you can either obviously pick up the details here, or let me know and I can pass on details after this webinar. If anybody has any questions, please pop them in the chat and we can get to them now. I'd also just thought I'd mention, because it was a question that came in during the session, was just about QA in report 3 and linking it back. As you know, we have a QA module within report 3. So this is really focusing on that, the quality assurance that sits within your project. So having, the signed fee agreements, health and safety certificates and whatnot. Myself and Liam actually have previously done a webinar on the QA module. So it is, a similar session, 30 minutes, but it really focuses on report 3, getting that information in there. So at the moment, it's sitting within our customer portal. So you can just access it there. But if anyone has any questions as well in relation to the QA side within report 3, obviously come back and come directly to ourselves. Yeah. Okay, super. Thank you everybody for listening today. Bye now.
Thank you so much. Bye.